Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to move to a different topic for the time being. As we know, the bill puts the BC Energy Regulator, a Crown corporation that oversees oil and gas operations, in charge of renewable energy projects and at least one major new transmission line. This bill exempts wind projects and the North Coast transmission line from the environmental assessment process. Instead, the BC Energy Regulator will develop a new regulatory process for assessing renewable energy projects. I just want to key in on the BC Energy Regulator first. A couple of questions. Can the Minister provide us with an outline of the timeline for the BC Energy Regulator to have the new regulatory regime in place? And what are the transition plans between now and then?
Minister.
So, Honourable Speaker, there's two ways to look about it, so I'll try and provide the member with the maximum information. As he knows that we're looking at a number of 3 different levels of regulation. Part of the reason why we have the first level of regulation is to ensure that the BC Energy Regulator can take charge of these projects right away. So that's the purpose of it. That's on a further section, and we'll get to that when we get there. The Lieutenant Governor and Council regulations will be developed first. They're primarily about turning on the relevant provisions of the ERAA to renewable energy activities. If the Act is approved, and I'm hoping it will be, it's going to be very convincing in the committee. The regulations are expected to be developed in stages as follows. Phase 1 by July 2025. The legislation would establish the BCR as the primary permitting agency for the North Coast transmission line, and the BCR will have delegated authorities for provincial natural resource authorizations needed to authorize early works and support the smooth transition of authorities for the wind projects. Phase 2 by fall of 2025, BCR will be established as the primary regulator and permitting authority for wind and solar energy projects. Wind and solar energy projects will require a construction and operation permit from the BCER. And then early next year, Phase 3, BCER board regulations will establish a robust regulatory framework for the life cycle oversight of wind and solar projects that will ensure safety and protection of the environment.
Leader of the third party.
Thank you. The BC Energy Regulator is not set up for public engagement in the same way as the Environmental Assessment Office is. Any person can make a submission to the BCER, yet there is no requirement for a response. A stakeholder recently asked the BCER about their decision-making process related to the PRGT pipeline and was told by the BCER that their decision-making process is not for the public. I'd like to ask the Minister, how will the BCER's process be accessible and transparent to the public?
Minister.
In advance of issuing permits, information is provided for people in the area affected by a project. And obviously, a deadline is in place for people to hear from that, and that forms part of the of the decision-making process of the BCER with respect to permitting. In addition to that, of course, there's the BCER also posts decisions, and there's a process for that as well. But I think that answers the question the member had.
Leader of the third party.
Just to clarify, I didn't hear anything in the minister's answer that suggested there is an ability for the BCR to take submissions or to reply to submissions within this process. I heard information distributed and posting of decisions strictly a one-way information flow from what I understood. Could the minister clarify there is no two-way flow of input within their process?
Minister.
Thank you. So in the process, there is obviously information from the regulator to the public, to the concerned public, and depending on what the circumstances are, but who would be in the immediate vicinity, say, of a relative vicinity of a renewable energy project, for example, or the transmission line in a different type of regulation. And then people who are concerned have ability to provide information and concern to the regulatory that informs, the BC Energy Regulator that informs their decision-making process, which is essentially how it works, which I think is what I said before. In addition, those concerns may well be brought together, brought to the attention of the proponent, as they well should be, to ensure that they're in a position to respond as well. And that's the process that's involved and has been involved over there from the time of the Oil and Gas Commission, now the BC Energy Regulator, for a time. And there will be a regulatory framework in place for renewable projects in the time frame I suggested to the member.
Leader of the third party.
Thank you. In addition to transparency issues, the BCER has a history of failing to regulate. BCER inspectors documented more than 80 potential infractions during 40 inspections of Coastal GasLink pipeline work sites, but only flagged 5 as violations of provincial regulations. Is the minister satisfied with the BCER's track record of compliance and enforcement activities to date?
Minister.
So the short answer is yes. But I'll give I know the member always wishes to get more from me, so I'm going to give him a little bit more than that. But also, what I'll do is, instead of reading the entire discussion, which is more of an estimates debate discussion of the BC Energy Regulator than it is a bill debate, I'll just go through some highlights in terms of compliance and enforcement. The BCR maintains a comprehensive compliance management system to to identify, coordinate, track, and continuously improve compliance management activities. This ensures energy companies in British Columbia operate in accordance with provincial legislation, regulations, permits, and authorizations designed to uphold public safety and environmental protection. As part of this system, the BCER dedicates significant resources to monitoring compliance, including carrying out more than 4,000 in-person inspections of energy resource activity sites across the province each year. There are more than 300 professionals in all kinds of areas at the BC Energy Regulator. Having had the occasion, Honourable Chair, to visit Fort St. John and visited the offices there, the level of expertise and the detailed understanding of the issues is remarkable by the people at the BC Energy Regulator. The inspection level initial compliance rate, just to go through issues and compliance, was over 94% during the period from 2017 to 2023. 254 out of 4,355 individual non-compliances were considered high severity, which requires permit holders to correct them within 24 hours. All others were of low severity, requiring correction within either 14 or 30 days. In short, I think the BC Energy Regulator, and there's always criticism of a regulator, there is of other regulators as well. It's possible in the past I've criticized the CRTC a few dozen times. That doesn't mean that I necessarily think that the CRTC doesn't do its job, and equally the BC Energy Regulator, I think, does an outstanding job, not just of as I noted earlier, the honourable member may have heard earlier of a direct community level involvement, in particular with First Nations, in particular with Treaty 8 First Nations, who are very involved in the main current regulatory focus of the energy regulator, which is the oil and gas industry. Close, when I refer to daily communications, I say to my other colleague, the opposition House Leader, that's what I was referring to in my answer to that question, the BC Energy Regulator, and that I expect they'll continue to maintain those high standards in the coming discussion, in the coming their coming responsibilities for renewables, as they have over time. These outstanding public servants have done with respect to the oil and gas industry.
Leader of the third party.
Thanks. So with this bill, the province is taking regulatory power from the public service and putting it into the hands of a Crown corporation funded almost entirely by industry, doing so without environmental assessment. Can the minister tell us, is the BCR getting more staff and skills to administer the acts that other ministries would otherwise be responsible?
Minister.
Yes, of course. And one of the key questions, we discussed this earlier, is there would be concern, perhaps in the oil and gas industry, if they were going to have to pay for the regulation of renewable industry. So how the BC Energy Regulator gets funded is, yes, from fees imposed on participants, on applicants, whether it's in the oil and gas industry now, in the hydrogen industry now, because we passed this legislation, happily with the support of the opposition 3 years ago, and will be with the renewable industry. So of course they'll build out capacity in the renewable industry, but that doesn't take away their responsibility and obligations with respect to oil and gas. With respect to the public servants in the ministries, I think this has one other positive effect, which is to create, in fact, and to give responsibility. When you think of these projects and how significant they are, $6 billion worth of projects, the energy equivalent to Site C, 51% owned by First Nations, that these projects, as they are developed, also come out of the responsibilities of the line ministries, which gives them more ability to respond to issues, I would argue, in other areas of endeavor where the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship is responsible. And I'd just say finally, in terms of the BC Energy Regulator, I don't know how you'd characterize that, but there's a team of 300 professionals. And subject matter experts include biologists, engineers, hydrologists, agrologists, compliance and enforcement officers, First Nation liaison officers, heritage conservation officers, and archaeologists. And of course, the BC Energy Regulator will continue and will need to expand as its responsibilities expand here, and you would expect that to be the case.